What is justice? Is it the sword of fairness striking down cruelty and tyranny? Is it the quiet hand that lifts the fallen? Or is it something more difficult to define, like a sacred order that holds the world together and gives meaning to right and wrong? We speak of justice as if we know what it means. But where does it come from? And more urgently, what happens to justice when God is no longer part of the picture? In our modern age, many believe we no longer need heaven to know what is right. We have courts, laws, human rights, and reason. These are our tools now, but others warn that without God, those tools lose their direction, and soon they become dangerous. Tonight, two thinkers meet to face this question. Their voices come from different centuries, but their ideas still shape how we live and what we believe. On one side is Fyodor Dostoevsky. He was a Russian novelist and a Christian who wrestled deeply with questions of good and evil. He believed that without God, morality becomes empty. In his view, justice without faith is not just incomplete, it becomes dangerous. Without God, he said, everything is permitted. On the other side is Bertrand Russell. He was a British philosopher, a committed atheist, and a champion of reason and science. He believed that morality is not a gift from heaven, but something human beings can build through compassion and logic. He argued that belief in God is not necessary for justice. In fact, he believed it often gets in the way. This is not just a debate about religion. It is a clash between two ways of seeing the world. One says that justice is eternal, absolute, and comes from a higher power. The other says that justice is made by us, for us, and grows as we do. So can there be justice without God? Or does justice die when belief is gone? The question remains open. Tonight, it will be tested. Let the conversation begin.
When I look at the world without God, I see a stage stripped of its meaning. The lights are still on, the actors still speak their lines, but the script has lost its author. We speak of justice, we demand it, but we no longer know who wrote the laws, or if they were ever written at all. You say we can build morality ourselves. You say we can define good and evil without heaven. But I have walked through the soul of man, and I know how quickly our desires can twist even our noblest words. Without God, good becomes whatever we prefer, and evil becomes whatever we fear. What we call justice becomes a reflection of our own power and appetites. Take the mind of a young man. He reads a little philosophy. He becomes convinced that there is no God. He believes the world is governed by chance and strength. He sees no judge above him. So he asks himself, why should I not act as I please? Why not take what I want if I am clever enough to get away with it? Why not step over the weak if they cannot stop me? I wrote about such a man. His name was Raskolnikov. He believed that morality was only a tool used by the herd to restrain the strong. So he took an axe and murdered an old woman, not for money, not for hate, but to test the theory, to see if he could do it without guilt, to see if he was above good and evil. But guilt came, and it crushed him. Why? Because even in the darkest moment, even when he denied God with his lips, his soul cried out for something higher, something eternal, something sacred. That something is not an invention, it is real. It is the voice of conscience. And that voice, I tell you, comes from God. If you remove God, you do not get freedom. You get chaos. You do not get justice. You get ideology, systems, excuses, rational plans that turn living men into numbers. And when that happens, when man becomes the measure of all things, justice turns into terror. We cannot build moral law on our own. We cannot invent it because we are too small and too broken. The highest justice is not made by man. It is revealed, and it comes not from the mind, but from the heart that kneels.
I understand the fear. When we take God out of the equation, It can feel like we are pulling the floor out from beneath our feet, but I would say that we are not falling. We are simply learning to walk on our own. Let us begin with a simple truth. The idea that morality must come from God assumes that human beings are incapable of moral thought without divine instruction. I find that view not only false, but insulting. We are capable of reason. We are capable of empathy. We are capable of recognizing suffering in others and knowing deep within that we should not cause it. Justice is not written in the stars. It is discovered through our shared experience as living, feeling beings. When we see a child harmed, we do not need a voice from heaven to tell us it is wrong. We know, because we, too, have been children. We know fear. We know pain, and we do not wish it on others. Religion, historically, has not been the protector of justice. It has been its obstacle. For centuries, people were burned alive for questioning doctrine. Slavery was defended with holy texts. Women were silenced in the name of divine order. Wars were fought over sacred land, with each side claiming the blessing of the same God. If morality comes from God, then it should be clear and perfect. But we see thousands of sects, each claiming to know what God wants, and they contradict each other. They kill each other. Is that justice? I do not say that religion is all bad. I do not say that believers are without compassion. But I do say that tying justice to the commands of a deity makes it rigid, unaccountable, and dangerous. When a man says, "God told me this is right," there is no room left for discussion, no room for evidence, no room for growth. True justice must be open to correction. It must be based on what we can see, what we can reason through, what we can test in the world. When slavery was abolished, it was not because a new commandment appeared. It was because people, slowly and painfully, came to see that no man should own another. That realization did not come from above. It came from within. So yes, we can have justice without God. In fact, I believe we must, because justice belongs to us, not to heaven, to the human heart, and to the human mind.
You say that morality comes from empathy, from reason, from the recognition that we are all alike in suffering. But I ask you, where does that sense of dignity come from? Why should suffering matter? Why should the pain of a stranger reach into your heart? In a world without God, there is no final answer to that question. There is no anchor, just emotions, and emotions change. What moves one man to tears may mean nothing to another. And without a higher standard, without a divine source, who can say which feeling is true when the storm comes, when war breaks out, or famine, or revolution? Men do not follow empathy. They follow strength. They follow fear. They follow ideology. And without something sacred to restrain them, they become monsters. Look at the 20th century. Men tried to create justice without God. They built entire systems, scientific, economic, social, to replace the church, to replace the soul, to replace heaven. And what came of it? Camps, executions, gulags, the machine of the state grinding flesh into numbers. I am not afraid of unbelief. I am afraid of belief in nothing, because the man who believes in nothing will believe in anything. He will follow any flag, any theory, any promise of utopia. And when the screaming starts, when the prisons fill up, when the knives come out, he will tell himself that it is justified, that it is for the greater good. But the good is not something we invent. It is something we receive from God, from the cross, from the truth that burns beyond time. You speak of justice as something evolving. I speak of justice as something revealed. And without that revelation, all we have left are clever arguments. And clever arguments have never saved a single soul.
You speak of the horrors of the 20th century, and I share your grief. But I must be clear, it was not atheism that built those prisons. It was dogma. It was fanaticism. And it does not require the absence of God to appear. In fact, it thrives in the presence of certainty, whether divine or secular. When Stalin murdered millions, he did not do so because he lacked belief. He did so because he replaced one unquestionable truth with another. He turned ideology into religion, and like religion, it demanded obedience, punished dissent, and wrapped its cruelty in the language of destiny. You say justice must be revealed. I say it must be tested, measured, challenged. It must remain open to evidence, not chained to revelation. The progress we have made, the end of slavery, the expansion of human rights, the protection of children and women and the vulnerable, these did not come from religious texts. They came from people willing to challenge those texts. And I do not deny that emotion can be dangerous, but so can faith. So can holy certainty. A man who believes that he speaks for God is far more dangerous than one who admits he might be wrong. You say we need an anchor. I say we need a compass. One moves us forward, the other holds us still. I trust reason because it has earned that trust. I trust empathy because it grows from our shared experience. And I trust that justice, though imperfect, can be shaped by us, not imposed from above. You say we are too small and broken to invent morality. I say we are the only ones here to do it, and we are capable of more than you think.
You speak of man's capability as if it were a stable thing, as if reason and compassion are permanent features of the human heart. But I have seen how fragile they are, how easily they collapse under the weight of desire. Man does not only seek justice, he also seeks revenge. He seeks power. He lies to himself. He tells himself that what he wants is right, and what he fears is evil. And if there is no higher standard, no divine light to expose the lie, then what can stop him? In my novel, The Brothers Karamazov, Ivan tells a story about a child tortured to death. He asks, if such suffering exists, can there truly be justice? And if we are to build heaven on earth, is it worth it if even one child must be sacrificed? And yet, in a godless world, sacrifices are made every day in the name of progress, in the name of the greater good. We step over the weak to reach the future, and we call it justice. But there is no justice without compassion, and compassion, true compassion, cannot survive long without God. Because compassion is not rational, it is divine. It is not useful, it is sacred. Without God, there is no reason to forgive, no reason to suffer for others, no reason to love those who hate you. These things make no sense unless we believe in something higher. You say that reason and evidence are enough, but I say that reason alone is not justice. It is a tool, and in the hands of men, tools can become weapons.
You say that forgiveness, compassion, and love make no sense without God. I could not disagree more. I have known people of deep kindness who believed in no God at all. They loved not because they were commanded to, but because they chose to. They forgave not because of doctrine, but because they understood pain, and they sacrificed not for reward in heaven, but because they believed in the value of another human life. That, to me, is the highest form of morality, the one that does not require eternal punishment or eternal reward, the one that acts because it is right, not because it is ordered. You fear that without God, everything becomes permitted. I fear that with God, anything can be justified. The crusader kills with a clear conscience. The inquisitor tortures in the name of salvation. The suicide bomber dies believing he serves justice. It is not belief in God that makes us moral. It is our willingness to see others as ends in themselves, to protect them, to listen to them, to recognize that their suffering is as real as our own. That does not require faith. It requires attention, imagination. Care. Justice is not something we find in the clouds. It is something we build, slowly and painfully, on the ground. And we build it best when we admit how much we do not know, when we are willing to be wrong, and to change. That is the kind of justice worth fighting for. Not one that comes from thunder, but one that grows from love.
You have said much about the horrors committed in the name of God. I do not deny them. Religion has been twisted, abused, corrupted. But I ask you to look deeper. The problem is not faith. It is man. We are broken creatures. We are torn between love and pride, between conscience and appetite, and religion, even in its failures, is an attempt to restrain that brokenness. It gives shape to our longing for the good. It holds us accountable to something higher than ourselves. But remove that restraint, and what remains? In my country, I saw it firsthand. The Tsars were cruel, yes, but when the revolution came, it promised equality, fairness, justice without God, and it delivered terror. In the name of the people, the church was torn down. The cross was replaced with the hammer. The soul was replaced with the plan. And soon, the prisons overflowed. Families were broken. Truth became whatever the party said it was. Morality became policy, and millions vanished. Why? Because without God, the state becomes God, the leader becomes prophet, the plan becomes sacred, and dissent becomes blasphemy. You say this was not atheism, but fanaticism. I say they are the same when anchored. Atheism that seeks to fill the hole left by God does not free us. It enslaves us to a new idol, man himself. Justice without God becomes law without mercy, power without conscience, judgment without forgiveness, and in the end it is not reason that rules, but fear. I do not speak of abstract philosophy. I speak of blood, of graves, of human souls shattered by a justice that forgot heaven.
You point to Stalin, to the terror of the Soviet Union, and I do not turn away. I have criticized totalitarianism all my life, whether it wears a crown, a cross, or a red flag. But let us not confuse the rejection of God with the rejection of morality. The crimes of the state do not prove the need for heaven. They prove the danger of any authority that demands obedience without question. In fact, many of those who resisted tyranny in the 20th century were secular men and women, humanists, scientists, poets. They believed in freedom, not because God told them to, but because they saw the dignity of the human being. And if you wish to speak of consequences, let us speak also of the Church. The Church burned heretics. It tortured in the name of purity. It silenced Galileo. It blessed kings and emperors as they waged war. It kept slaves in chains and women in shadows. It told the poor to suffer now and wait for heaven later. This too was done in the name of justice, and it was done with the full weight of belief. I do not say that religion always leads to cruelty, but I do say that belief in a higher law is no guarantee of mercy, and disbelief is no guarantee of evil. If anything, secular morality demands more from us. It forces us to take responsibility. We cannot hide behind divine command. We must face each other, listen, reason, forgive. You fear the consequences of godlessness. I fear the consequences of moral certainty, especially when it claims to speak for eternity. Justice, in my view, must remain human and fragile. That is what keeps it honest.
You speak of human responsibility, and I agree, we must take responsibility. But I believe you underestimate the depth of the human heart. You believe we are reasonable, that we can learn, that we can evolve. I believe that we can also fall, that we can deceive ourselves, that we are capable not only of error, but of evil. And when that evil comes, reason is not enough, law is not enough, society is not enough. What can cleanse the soul? What can stop a man when he believes he is justified in cruelty? Only the presence of something sacred, only the knowledge that there is a judge above all judges, that there is a truth not written by men, that there is mercy greater than any tribunal. You ask for a morality that is flexible, that can change. I ask for a morality that can endure, that can stand when the winds of history blow against it. It is easy to be good in times of peace. But what about when your enemies knock at the door? When your people are starving? When you are told that violence is necessary for progress? That is when the idea of God becomes more than belief. It becomes protection, not just for the victim, but for the oppressor, because it reminds him that he is not the highest authority, that he, too, will be judged. Without that, what stops him? You say we must build justice with our hands. I say we must also kneel, because only then do we remember that justice is not ours to own. It is something we must serve.
And yet, if we must serve justice, should we not first understand it? You speak of judgment, of sacred truth, but sacred truth, throughout history, has meant many things. To one man, it means love. To another, it means conquest. To one, mercy. To another, martyrdom. Who decides which voice speaks for God? That is why we must ground our morality not in revelation, but in reason, not in sacred texts, but in human lives. You ask, what stops a man from cruelty? I ask, what gives him the courage to resist it? A man who believes in reason may question orders. A man who believes in compassion may break the law to save a stranger. A man who believes in doubt may refuse to burn a heretic. The moral progress we have made, and we have made some, came not from deeper faith, but from deeper thought, from questioning authority, from putting human suffering above abstract holiness. God may inspire love, but he has also inspired hate. The same scriptures that teach peace have also been used to justify war. That is not an accident. That is the danger of grounding morality in the unseen. I do not say that all believers are wrong. I do not say that your faith is without value, but I do say that justice must answer to us, to our reason, to our hearts, to what we can know, test, and share. Because, if we wait for heaven to bring justice, we will wait forever.
You say justice must answer to man, but man is restless. He changes with the seasons, with his desires, with the movements of history. If justice must answer to us, then it becomes whatever we need it to be. It becomes a mask for power, or for fear, or for fashion. But justice, true justice, does not change. It is the same for the king and the beggar, for the child and the criminal, for the rich and the forgotten. And if that is true, then it cannot come from us. It must come from something higher. You speak of sacred texts as dangerous. I speak of sacred truth, the kind that is written not only in books, but in the conscience of man. A truth that whispers, even when the world is loud, that tells the murderer he has done wrong, even when no one sees. That tells the victim his pain matters, even when no one believes him. I do not say that all religion is good. I say that without something holy, without something that cannot be bent or bought or rewritten, justice becomes negotiation. It becomes preference. It becomes a mask. Look at the man who forgives, truly forgives, not because it helps him, not because it brings peace, but because he believes that mercy is sacred. That is justice, not punishment, not revenge, but mercy. And mercy is not rational. It is divine. You have asked what justice is. I say it is not a system. It is a mystery, a glimpse of eternity breaking into time, a reflection of God's love in a broken world. Without that love, justice becomes dry. It becomes cold. It becomes a courtroom without a heart. And so I say again, justice without God is not justice. It is only law. And law alone is never enough.
You speak beautifully of love, of mercy, of conscience, and I do not deny their power. But I ask you, must these things come from beyond us to be real? When a mother forgives her child, is it because she has read scripture, or because she loves? When a stranger helps another, expecting nothing in return, is it because of doctrine, or because he sees himself in another's pain? You call justice a mystery. I call it a project, a task we have only just begun. We do not have all the answers. We do not always agree, but we learn, we argue, we correct ourselves. That is not weakness, it is strength. What you call shifting sand, I call growth. I believe in morality, not because it is eternal, but because it is possible, because we can reason, because we can imagine what others feel, because we can change our minds when we are wrong. Yes, sacred belief can inspire courage, but so can reason, so can love that expects no reward, so can doubt that refuses to kill. I do not believe in eternal law. I believe in human dignity, and that belief has led us to abolish slavery, to expand rights, to protect the vulnerable, not because a God told us to, but because we came to see that it was right. Justice must remain ours, not because we are perfect, but because we are here and we are trying, and sometimes trying is more powerful than any faith.
There is something noble in your faith in man. I do not mock it. I, too, have seen goodness in human beings, quiet, selfless, unshakable. But I have also seen the shadow, and I believe that without God, the shadow grows, because we become the measure of all things, and we are too fragile for that burden. You believe that morality can evolve, that justice can be improved, and in small things, perhaps it can. But the great questions do not evolve. They haunt us. What is good? What is evil? Why must the innocent suffer? What are we willing to sacrifice to build a better world? These are not technical questions. They are spiritual ones, and they demand more than policy. They demand humility, repentance, grace. I speak of God not as a theory, but as a person, a presence, one who forgives even when we deserve judgment, one who offers hope even when we are guilty, one who restores justice not by punishing, but by redeeming. You believe we can carry justice forward with reason. I believe we can only carry it if we are carried ourselves by something greater, by someone greater. You call this mystery. I call it love. And without that love, justice is not only incomplete, it is dangerous, because it forgets that every man, even the worst, is still a soul.
And I say again, we do not need eternity to make life meaningful. We do not need a divine judge to know that the innocent should not suffer. We do not need a sacred law to know that torture is wrong, that cruelty wounds us all, that every child deserves care, every stranger deserves dignity. You ask, where do these feelings come from? I say, from the same place as poetry, from the same place as music, from the same place as love, from the quiet parts of us that see beauty, that feel sorrow, that long for peace. They come from us, and that is enough. I do not need to believe that my soul is eternal to believe that my actions matter, that what I do today, how I treat others, how I speak, how I forgive, shapes the world we leave behind. Justice, in the end, is not about God. It is about each other. Can we listen? Can we understand? Can we learn to live together without destroying one another? That, to me, is the real moral test. Not obedience, not belief, but empathy, courage, and the willingness to face our failures and still go on. If there is no heaven, then justice is more urgent, not less, because this life is all we have, and that means we must make it just.
Two voices, two visions. Two ways of answering the same question. For Dostoevsky, justice begins with God. Without him, we lose the meaning of good and evil. We lose the foundation of mercy. We lose the ability to say what is right when the world grows dark. In his view, justice is not something we create. It is something we must receive, something sacred, something revealed through the mystery of faith and the suffering of love. For Russell, justice is not handed down from the sky. It is built by human hands, guided by reason, tested through conversation, science, and compassion. He believes we do not need a divine command to know what is right. We only need to listen, to think, and to care. One sees justice as eternal and divine. The other sees it as fragile and human. One warns that without God we become lost. The other warns that with God we may stop questioning. They do not agree, and maybe they never could, but both see the stakes. Both see the danger of cruelty, of power without limits, of people forgotten and punished in the name of something greater. And maybe that is where the conversation leaves us, not with an answer, but with a deeper sense of the question. Can there be justice without God? If you say no, then you must ask how to protect the sacred from becoming a weapon. If you say yes, then you must ask how to build a moral world without drifting into chaos. We all want justice. But what are we really asking for when we say the word, order, mercy, fairness, forgiveness, and most of all, who decides? That answer, perhaps, is still being written by all of us, together.